Bienvenidos a este nuevo espacio, a este nuevo podcast que hoy inauguramos, podcast cuyo título es Oportunidades en Grecia, en el que queremos acercar las oportunidades que pueda haber en Grecia para la empresa española que quiere internacionalizarse en esta parte del mundo. Oportunidades en términos de exportación de bienes y servicios y oportunidades en términos, ¿por qué no?, también, lógicamente, de inversión. Hoy tenemos con nosotros a Thanasis Tsantilas, destacada personalidad del mundo de la energía y en particular de las renovables, con quien vamos a tener una conversación para conocer mejor lo que se puede hacer, el potencial de ese sector en Grecia. As I said before, welcome to this first Oportunidades en Grecia podcast. With this podcast, we would like to approach different sectors of activity where we consider Spanish companies might have a say, whether it's exports of products and services, investing, or whatever else. I'm very happy to start this series of podcasts with Thanasis Tsantilas. Very welcome, Thanasis. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jorge, for the opportunity. It's a great honor for me to talk to you and the audience about a very important, very interesting journey that we are doing here.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thanasis is a mechanical engineer and holds an MBA. He's been in the sector for already almost 30 years and is, as of today, Iberdrola Rokas chairman of the board of directors and managing director. Iberdrola Rokas is a subsidiary company of Iberdrola in Greece that ranks in this very moment among the top investors in renewables with a very strong position in the wind sector. So before moving into the questions with you, Thanasis, I would like just to brief a couple ideas that might help identify the importance of the sector energy and the sector, specifically the renewable sector in the country at this very moment, so that the audience could understand why we're here today talking about this. So first of all, Greece is among the European leading countries in its bet for renewables. There are different pieces that could confirm this sort of leadership. One of them is the announcement of the close-up of the last coal facilities by 2028. Another one is the National Plan for Energy and Climate, which calls for energy consumption of energy from renewable sources to go up to 35% by 2030, which is almost next door. And I would add on top of that this comes along actually with the support of the decision by the government to allocate an important part of the 30.5 billion euros from the next-gen EU funds to the green transition, which actually means expending close to 16 billion euros, give or take, through both public and private funding. So, a clear will to advance in renewables and will that is supported by the decision of allocating resources to this objective. Back to Thanasis. I think here your input is really very, very important for the audience, so we get to know a little bit the history of renewables, where does the sector come from, and where is it heading. And my first question for you would be, how would you assess the evolutions of renewables in Greece in the last 20 years? What has happened in the last 20 years?
Yes, thank you, Jorge, for the opportunity. In the land of Aeolos, the truth is that Greece started very early entering to the investments in wind energy, and then to renewable energy sources in general. This saga started about 30 years ago, and we as Rokas pioneered a little bit more than 25 years, entering very early in the market in order to tap these opportunities that they have been at that time look very lucrative for the energy sector in total for Greece. And we simply started investing, and that met along with Iberdrola at the beginning of 2000, where Iberdrola started heavily investing in Spain and then expanding in other countries around the globe. And therefore we met somewhere in the meantime, having common interest in investing in renewable energy sector, and really taking these opportunities for big investments in renewable energy sector. We know that the renewable energy sector, the renewable energy sources investments in the sector, it's capital intensive. And it proved after 25 years that they are also very efficient and have a full meaning to be advanced. Nowadays are a mainstream investment, and the sector, although we had some difficulties starting with the crisis, the economic crisis, beginning of 2010, 11, 12, we didn't met our common, our usual compound annually growth that we had at that moment. We started taking off again after 2015, 2016, and therefore meeting full recovery after 2017 with the backup of European Union, very, very important decisions to assist to back up the investments throughout the energy sector through renewables.
Excellent. So quite a long story. It's renewables don't come as a new thing at all in Greece, and I think that's important to know for our audience. There's a long track record of investing in the sector in the history of the country. Going a little bit closer to this moment, to nowadays, something that is, I think, I don't know whether surprising, but I think it's in any case good news for the sector, renewable sector, is that despite the reduction of the annual energy consumption because of the crisis, which is something that has happened regularly almost in every country, despite that reduction of the consumption, the rates of renewable penetration in the electricity mix, as much as I think the total consumption in absolute values has risen all along this pandemic, these 2-3 years. Is this trend, the new energy mix, to stay in the market? Why, if so, do you think it will stay in the market?
Yes, the truth is that throughout the world, we know that consumption dropped during pandemic. That was obvious, and it really took off about, let's say, 6 months ago, where we just met again the usual trends of increasing in the consumption. However, and during also this drop, obviously we had an increase in renewables, in renewable energy sector, increase in the production, in the mix. That was obviously for two reasons. One was that paramount importance of the climate, to tackle the climate change, became a very significant factor. to address this issue through renewables. And the second very important thing was that renewables proved to be extremely competitive, especially the last 5 years. And that was really supported the renewables to increase their mix in the energy production and consumption.
So, well, I have a little bit of data regarding this particularly, and what I have written down is that the installed capacity of renewables grew up to the tune of 16% from 19 to 18, and 6.5% 20 to 19. So yes, clearly during the pandemic, renewables have been a sector where investment has not been diminished due to COVID-19. I mentioned in the introduction that there are 2 or 3 things that really clearly show the interest in the country for renewables. I mentioned the announcement regarding closing coal facilities in 2028, and also something that is very clarifying, the national plan for energy and climate. And I want to ask you a little bit on this. What is your take? The national plan for energy and climate has basically 4 pillars. It talks about new tenders, it talks about interconnection of the islands, and I guess the islands with the continent as well. It talks about hybrid systems and offshore wind parks. What is your take on all those 4 pillars? What would you expect to be the evolution of those 4 pillars in the near future and the medium term?
Yes, we are happy to see that the National Plan for Energy and Climate has those 4 pillars, that they are very specific for Greece. And a couple of them are really on covering the Greek example, on increasing the penetration of renewables. One of these pillars, the interconnection of the non-interconnected islands, it's an obvious necessity for Greece, because we should not forget that we are burning oil in most of these islands, which is the dirtiest and also the more expensive fuel that one can think of supporting the electricity demands in those islands. So that is a must for the sector to be tackled. The second issue is obviously acceleration of the planning of legislation and implementation, which is very necessary for the Greek example. It's a paramount importance that we push and expedite the penetration through a very, very specific legislation that will enable in very short terms, in very short time, to meet those demands. The third thing is storage, which is extremely important for systems of renewables high penetration. Greece also has this particularity of not having base load power plants, and eventually after the phasing out of lignite plants, that will play a significant role in investing more in storage and hybrid systems. And lastly, regarding the offshore, we all know that there is a big potential in the Greek waters, especially the Aegean Sea, where we can by tapping this wind potential, we can increase both the penetration in renewables, the competitiveness of the electrical system, and also via implementing policies of exploiting offshore, assist in the interconnection of the islands itself. So, yeah, I truly believe that these 4 pillars are very, very important for meeting the demands from the next at least 10 years and on.
I was thinking, you were mentioning the 4 pillars, and we have talked previously about some of them, particularly about the interconnection with the islands. And we have talked, you mentioned before as well, the more efficient way of producing energy that now the renewables bring along. I will ask you again about this a bit later on, but question, could Greece eventually be a hub for renewables once there is connection also outside Greece? I mean, now there are works to connect Greece with Crete, eventually also with Cyprus and with other countries. I was wondering what would be your take about thinking that Greece could become a hub for energy, for renewable energy. I will ask you again a little bit later in the conversation. Back to something that has been in the common conversation of a lot of people lately. What are your thoughts about the energy situation, the fluctuation of prices, the complexity of the market these days, and its effects within the economy? How would you tackle today's situation of the price of energy?
It is true that we are living in a situation started last 6 months, where some factors really influence the prices in the electricity sector. We have the obvious ones, which were the geostrategic issues around Europe and the eastern border. We have the closing the end of the pandemic, where consumption increased and increased quite fast. We have the phasing out of the decision of phasing out coal or lignite plants to tackle the climate change, and I'm fully pro on that. We should leave a planet for our kids that they are cleaner than it is right now. And third is that we are in the middle of an energy transition, which is obviously shifting the paradigm of production and consumption into a new era. All these factors, some obvious and some not very obvious or expected, let's say, give us this new challenge to address. But I really think that they will not be for long. We are in the middle of accepting that we need to shift our paradigm through new energy production and energy consumption at the same time. I really think that consumption will also take off into new examples of increasing electric consumption in mobility, in heating, house heating, and don't forget that we will have also new products, new means of using energy, and I could name hydrogen, which is something that will come, I think, very fast, and that will give us something new in how we produce, how we transport, how do we consume our energy. So I'm really confident that although we have challenges, the same challenges came 100 or 150 years ago to humanity. We are here with more tools, with a lot of inventions and interventions to take this opportunity and have a better planet and a new examples for the generations that will come.
You mentioned something that I think is very important. You mentioned you talked about sustainability from the demand side and from the supply side, and you talked about technology. And but you mentioned a little bit, and I would like you to elaborate a little more. You mentioned a little bit on green hydrogen exploitation, and I would like to see if you could tell us a little bit more about how green hydrogen could eventually facilitate or guarantee the sustainability of energy production, and also about one of the big questions, which is storage. You mentioned that shutting coal mines opens some questions that we have to solve. One of them is guarantee that the level of energy is homogeneous on the time, and that demands storage facilities, I guess. So how could this new technology, the hydrogen, the green hydrogen, help both of them, production and storage?
Greatly. Every crisis, every challenge brings us opportunities, and that happens with the energy. Let's call it crisis. I don't think it's a crisis per se. I think it's a way to stand into a transition that is happening right now. One of the opportunities, as you mentioned, and which, as we mentioned before, one of those opportunities is new products that are coming in and streamlining the energy sector. It's introducing of hydrogen, especially green hydrogen. I truly believe that that will be an opportunity that we will very soon mainstream in our everyday life. We are in the borders of accepting that hydrogen, and especially green hydrogen, will be efficient and also economically viable for the next investments that we will do, and that will tackle issues in mobility, in the industry, and plus the fact that storage will also play a significant role. Great investments has been made and will be made in storage. And as I said, I think it's a challenge. At the same time, it's a great opportunity that we will invest on those sectors in Greece as well. And Greece also gives, with its particularities in both those sectors, very, very good platform to exercise ourselves in investments.
Thank you very much, Thanasis. I have a last question. It's we could say the $1 million question. With regards to climate change, is a renewable source of energy, could those be enough to cap, let's say, climate change? And what's the take of the company of Iberdrola regarding climate change?
We are fully committed on that target. We strongly believe that climate change is here. It started affecting us. It will affect us heavily in the years to come. We are fully committed, not now, but already 20 years ago, to start playing an important role, and so does Iberdrola, to link the climate change objectives and base them on renewable energies. I have to point out that Iberdrola so far has invested over 120 billion euros, among other, just to generate elements of renewable energy production and promote the development of smart grids and etc. This has contributed decisively to reducing emissions of polluting gases and improving air quality, achieving 6 times lower emissions than its European competitors. The view is 2030 and on. I have to say that we are already in 2022, which means that, as you said at the beginning, 2030 is right next door. So our view is 2040 and 2050. The point is that we have already designed that by 2030 we will invest another 150 billion euros. And that is to reach our contribution in achieving zero net emissions in Europe, and not only. So we have a very firm and very objective commitment to do that, and we are about to triple our investments for the next 10 years. We will stop using coal, lignite, whatever sacrifices our planet to our next generations as a heritage. So we will do that, and we will do that and committing ourselves with more sustainable and more profitable solutions. We should not forget that profitability will come eventually through these investments. So I think that that gives us an overall picture of how Iberdrola and also in Greece will particularly be focused on.
Thank you very much for the answer, very clear as well. I mentioned before, when we talk about interconnection with the islands and the continent with the islands, about the possibility of maybe seeing Greece as a hub for renewable energy because of its potential with wind and also with solar. Do you foresee something like that happening?
You mean interconnection of the islands?
The interconnection, interconnection with the rest of Europe and with other countries.
Yes.
And the country, because of its potential in renewables, becoming a hub, supplying maybe renewable energy or energy from renewable sources to other countries.
Absolutely. I truly believe that if we take under consideration that there is a high possibility to increase our investments of interconnecting Greece and using Greece as a hub to other European countries, especially Italy and Balkan countries, we see that there is an increase of those initiatives. And Greece will play really a significant role. As it started playing with natural gas, and it will increasingly play this role to electricity as well. We have seen recently a positive reaction for East-Med interconnection, the electrical interconnection, which increases the opportunities to interconnect Egypt, Cyprus, Greece, and using Greek renewable energy sources to further transport energy to Europe. I definitely believe that in Greece we have an excess of potential to not only to consume but also to export, and eventually, yes, truly believe that Greece will play a significant role, becoming hub for the European benefit.
Excellent. So, well, up to here. Thank you very much, Thanasis, for the conversation. It's been really a pleasure to have you here with us today. Let me just mention a couple ideas that have been in the conversation, that have flown with the conversation. We mentioned, very important, the compromise to phase out coal energy by 2028. You talked about a big recovery, big push from 2017 or so with regards to investments in renewables. You mentioned how extremely competitive energy that comes from renewable sources has become, which is a very good news, of course. We talked about National Plan for Energy and Climate, where you elaborate a lot on interconnection between among the islands and the islands with the continent. We mentioned the idea of a hub here in Greece. We talk about the importance of technology from the supply and from the demand side, green hydrogen and its consequences in producing energy in a sustainable way, and also storage. We do appreciate a lot for all the ideas and for spending this moment with us. Thanasis, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jorge. It was a great honor for me to be with you and trying to explain just a little bit, but I think that we draw the capital lines of what we do and what we can do in Greece and beyond for the energy issues and electricity issues in the area. Thank you very much for giving me that opportunity.
Thank you, Thanasis. So we close this first podcast of Oportunidades en Grecia. You can follow up more on Greece at www.ithex.es, and we talk to you very soon.